Angus versus Wangus. Which breed of cattle makes the best brisket? I'm testing them both head to head in this video, so you know which one to buy the next time you smoke a brisket. Let's get smoking. American Wagyu, or as I like to call it, Wangus, is a crossbreed of Japanese Wagyu and American Angus beef. The result of this crossbreed is a balance of texture, flavor, and tenderness that is considered better than Angus, but not as fatty as purebred Japanese A5 Wagyu. Now, Wangus beef is often marketed just as Wagyu, so it's often confused with Japanese A5 Wagyu, which is that super fatty, well-marbled beef that is straight from Japan. And this is all made more confusing because a lot of ranches in the US and Canada are now breeding purebred Japanese Wagyu. So now we have purebred American Japanese Wagyu, we have Wangus or American Wagyu, and we have Japanese A5 Wagyu from Japan. And it's all being called Wagyu. Now, I use Wangus briskets in a lot of my videos, and I've often just referred to them as Wagyu briskets, and that causes a lot of people to think that I'm some sort of rich YouTuber that imports only the finest Wagyu briskets from Japan, but that is not the case. I use Wangus or the crossbreed briskets from a local ranch called Brant Lake Wagyu, and they're often just a little bit more expensive or even the same price as the prime grade Angus briskets that I get from the store. So it's really actually affordable for a brisket that I think is actually a lot better marbled and a lot better quality than a prime grade Angus brisket. If you want to find out where to buy Wangus briskets in your area, check out the American Wagyu Association at wagyu.org. Search Google for a Wagyu ranch in your area, or check out snakeriverfarms.com. They're kind of the market leader in Wangus right now, in my opinion. That's if you're in the US, and check out Brant Lake Wagyu if you're in Canada. That's where I get my briskets, and they are good. I won first place brisket with their beef in a barbecue competition last year. That's how good their beef is. Okay, let's get to trimming some brisket. This is a prime grade Angus brisket. You can see it's pretty well marbled, especially in the point. What I find unique about Angus briskets is the fat cap tends to be a lot more pillowy and soft than Wangus briskets. It's almost like the fat cap is bumpy and pebbled, whereas the Wangus briskets I use often have a really soft fat cap, but the fat is much more smooth and dense, sometimes borderline waxy in consistency. Moving on to trimming the Wangus brisket, you can clearly see that it's much more marbled than the Angus brisket, and it has large honeycomb structures of fat and collagen. That's actually a really important factor because the larger collagen structures of the Wangus briskets make them more tender than the Angus briskets. Angus briskets can be tougher because the collagen honeycomb structures surrounding the muscle fibers are smaller and more densely packed. I'll link the Meat Science article that had those findings because it's really interesting and confirmed a suspicion I've had for a really long time about the density of those collagen structures resulting in tougher meat. I remember years ago I got a brisket that had such a dense and small honeycomb structure of collagen that it took me hours at 205 internal to get it probe tender, and it still came out tough when it was done. I wouldn't be surprised if that brisket wasn't even Angus and it was some other breed with even smaller collagen structures, but that's just a theory. Now I'm rubbing both briskets with kosher salt and coarse ground pepper, just keeping it really simple. And while the briskets soak up the salt, I'm preheating Big Beefy Luigi by lighting a fire with my grill gun. The grill gun is a real game changer if you own a charcoal or wood smoker because it lights fires in under 60 seconds, and you don't need to mess around with a charcoal chimney or dirty smoldering smoke. Guys, I want to take a minute to thank this video's sponsor, Vite Ramen. It's a family-owned business with a dream of making it so everyone can eat healthy. Now, I don't know about you, but growing up, I thought that ramen noodles were super unhealthy, and they're those packages of cheap noodles that I brought to lunch when I didn't have time to make a sandwich and a proper lunch, and I just kind of crumbled them up, and then I poured out the flavor package, and then I just ate them dry. That's what I thought ramen noodles were. Well, things have changed, and ramen is now healthy. Vite Ramen is like a bowl of ramen crafted by a Michelin star chef made of superfoods like quinoa designed by a leading nutritionist. It takes me only 3 minutes to make, which is great for a busy dad like me, and unlike those cheap packages of noodles I ate as a kid, it's a full meal packed with protein and broth made of real ingredients to keep me energized all day. Speaking of protein, it's got up to 31 grams of complete protein, which is absolutely amazing for ramen noodles. I've tried a couple of their flavors and they're all super tasty. I especially like experimenting and adding in my own ingredients, like brisket brisket burnt ends to elevate it to the next level. So to get some Vite Ramen, just click the link below to get a bundle that gives you $25 in value of free gifts and free shipping in the contiguous USA. And also don't forget to use my code STBBQ at checkout for an additional 10% off. That's viteramen.com/STBBQ, or just click the link below and use the code STBBQ. Now, I'm running a 225 to 250 degrees fire and going low and slow until the briskets start sweating out a lot of moisture. Then I'll bump it up to 275 and keep smoking until the internal temps are around 190 in the briskets, and the color is where I want it to be on both briskets. Once the briskets hit 190, I'm taking them off BBL. Then they go into an aluminum pan with half a cup of water, and they get tightly sealed with foil. Then I'm holding them in the oven at 150 degrees Fahrenheit overnight to finish them and continue to break down the collagen and make them super tender. And after 15 hours of holding in the oven, I removed the Angus brisket and I sliced it up for the first taste test.
That's good. Smoky, bark's good, peppery, salted perfectly, perfectly cooked, not overcooked, not pot roasty at all. Just a really good cooked brisket. I'm going to take a taste of the flat now. Fat renders perfectly, pulls apart easily. Beefy, salt, pepper. Just an amazing brisket, perfectly cooked. I'm really interested to see what the Wangus brisket is going to taste like in comparison to this, so I can compare them back to back. So first impressions, it smells a little bit different for some reason, and I've smelt this before, but it's never been a direct comparison between a Wangus brisket and an Angus brisket. The Wangus briskets smell sweeter. They don't smell bad, they just smell sweeter. Let's dunk these in some tallow so they don't oxidize, just like the other one I did. And let's take a look at this. Bends over, nice and floppy. So just like the other one, it's nice and tender. The fat is fully rendered. It's nice and squishy. So let's take a bite of this. Bottoms up. It's got more bite to it, definitely, than the last brisket I had. It's almost more beefy. It's got more of like a, I've said this before, but it's got like a prime rib type texture. Oh my God, that is so good. Yeah, that's exactly how I would describe it. Prime rib type texture. It pulls apart, or let's see if it does pull apart. Yeah, it pulls apart easily. Fat's perfectly rendered, nice and smoky, good bark. Okay, this is the flat, so these are my tasting notes. Perfectly cooked, great smoke, great bark. It's tender, it's juicy. So the same words I used to describe the Angus brisket. The difference here, the different words I would use to describe this brisket is more of a prime rib type flavor. It smells sweeter and it's juicier. I can't really narrow it down more than that, but it just tastes juicier. There's probably more fat in it, or maybe there's more collagen in it, and that's all rendering out and creating the perception of moisture. But it is definitely juicier than the Angus brisket that I just cooked. Moving on to the point. I'll cut the burnt ends off here. So we'll do a nice cut right there. Big old burnt end, which is okay. And now I'm gonna start making these slices. And I'll just get organized here because I got a teeny tiny cutting board. I really need a bigger cutting board. Okay, before I taste the point, let's look at some visual differences that are really apparent. If you look at the point here, you'll notice that the collagen fibers, those little honeycomb structures that surround the meat fibers, they're a lot bigger than that Angus brisket. And that's because with the Wagyu influence in this Wagyu Angus crossbreed, the collagen is much larger in honeycomb structure. With Angus, it has smaller honeycomb structures, and there's even a scientific article that I'll link here or in the description section below that actually did a test, and they found that American Wagyu or Wangus brisket, like you see here, is actually more tender because the honeycomb structure is larger. It's got larger collagen structures than the Angus brisket, which has tighter honeycomb, and the tighter honeycomb structures in the Angus make it a little bit tougher. So let's see if I notice a difference. Okay, we're gonna pull this guy apart. It actually pulls apart really easily. I thought it was going to be a bit stretchy. Sometimes with these Wangus briskets, they take a little bit longer to cook the point because those honeycomb collagen structures are bigger than the Angus briskets, but they're also thicker. So they take a little bit longer to render down and they can get kind of stretchy if you're not careful. So let's take a bite of this. Oh man, that's so good. This is really easy to tell the difference between the Angus brisket. The biggest difference here is those big honeycomb collagen structures. Again, it's almost like you're biting into a piece of beef mixed with a piece of delicious fatty jello. So I don't think it's the extra intermuscular fat necessarily in the Wangus briskets, especially in the point, that makes it more juicy. I think it's the larger collagen structures, and once those render down and they start converting into gelatin, that creates a lot of that perception of moisture and the extra fat. It's just a different mouthfeel with these Wangus briskets because they're so jello-y and they just have such a luxurious mouthfeel. Oh man, so good. Here's another example. You can see how big those collagen structures are. You pull them apart and it's like biting into jello. Oh man, that's good. So I've tasted both the briskets now. The big question is, which one do I prefer? And I'd have to say, hands down, I might be a little bit biased because I cook a lot of them, but I like Wangus briskets better than Angus briskets. And the reason is they taste a little bit more beefy and kind of more prime ribby. They taste sweeter. The larger collagen structures make it feel like you're biting into something that is like half meat, half nice, fatty, salty jello, and it's just got a completely different mouthfeel. And in general, it's just juicier than Angus briskets that I've cooked in the past. So that's my preference, and that is reflected in this taste test in this video. So happy to hear your guys' opinion if you've tried both of these types of brisket, an Angus brisket and a Wagyu Angus cross brisket. Let me know in the comments section. Really interested to know your opinion and your experience. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. And if you want to talk more brisket, more barbecue, and everything barbecue related, consider joining my Patreon. I'll link it in the description section below. You'll get access to our private community there that is just full of awesome people that just want to get better at barbecue. You'll have instant access to me if you have any questions, and it's going to be a really fun time. So hope to see you there, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy smoking.